Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live from Film Fanatic headquarters. It's 11:02 on Halloween day. So I just did a quick little Halloween special video for Film Fanatic head from Film Fanatic headquarters. I always do. I like to do seasonal videos. It's kind of fun, and especially one for Halloween. I usually do one every year for Halloween, and then I always do one for Christmas, and then I do one for Thanksgiving as well, because there's like a big nostalgia thing, but in relation to film and movies, there's I mean a billion movies that put you in a Halloween state of mind. Obviously, probably more so than anything else. And then I think for Christmas movies, the same thing. I'm a huge fan of Christmas, and so I have a shit ton of movies that I love that are tied to the holiday. So I always talk about those movies. I always do a special around that, and as well as Thanksgiving. Although there's not as quite as many, but still there's a lot of films that are tied to Thanksgiving for me. Um, One movie that I think is for me, which is kind of maybe an odd choice that I think is so tied to Thanksgiving and Christmas, is my favorite movie of all time, and that is The Godfather. Because I feel like that movie, well, there are a lot of Christmas scenes in that movie, so there's that, and also, it's a family movie. Um, and that movie is my all-time favorite movie. So I usually always talk about those movies around the holidays, and I have so many memories as a kid growing up. Watching that movie, watching The Godfather on cable when it would be on, and we'd watch it, sit around and watch it as a family. And a lot of the times it would be, uh, on the various networks, it would be shown a lot on Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's a feel-good family movie. So but anyway, today's show is on a different thing. So today's show is on the new David Cronenberg movie Shrouds that just came out on DVD, Blu-ray. Just got a physical release. It was, I think, just really briefly was in the theaters, and I just watched it. I watched it last week, and I'm just getting around to it now on talking about it. So I really was excited to see this movie. I'm a massive David Cronenberg fan. I mean, one of the greatest directors. He's definitely one of my top, one of my top, man, one of my top directors of all time. So many great films. I mean, such a diverse track record. I mean, I recently bought two David Cronenberg films. Well, the last couple of years, Shivers, which is unbelievable, and then I really love The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken. That movie is so fucking awesome. The Fly, of course. The Fly is probably the first movie of David Cronenberg's that I had ever seen. Um, I mean, just so many movies to his credit. It's unbelievable. I mean, the list of films. He's also, I mean, he was a Canadian. He's a Canadian director. He kind of came out of the real like, I mean, a true independent filmmaker, but he came out of the kind of the Canadian, kind of underground, if you want to call it that. Kind of in the Canadian Canuck exploitation, if you will. A lot of his early work was mass. I mean, his films are so influential. Um, but he really came out of the low budget kind of independent filmmakers that came out of from the decades from the 70s to the 80s, and his early work especially are definitely films that I kind of tie into that kind of the exploitation, real low budget, gritty, fucked up, cinema world that I just always kind of gravitate towards. But I think the first, definitely as my earliest recollection of first seeing a Cronenberg film was The Fly. And that movie fucked me up when the first time I saw it. That movie terrified me. Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. I have not done a show on The Fly, but that would be a fantastic movie to talk about because that movie is such a masterpiece, and it's so holds up. I mean, the whole like transformation, and it's just an amazing film. But that was pretty much the first Cronenberg movie I had ever seen. But I mean, the list of films are just unbelievable. Video Drone from 1983, masterpiece. Um, History of Violence. He worked with Viggo Mortensen on about three films. History of Violence is a badass movie. That's one of his later films. It came out in 2005, but that movie is so awesome. I mean, it's a uber violent kind of gangster movie, but oh man, that movie is just so great. And then another amazing classic is Scanners. Love that movie to death. One of the greatest movies. He's also known for kind of inventing the term body horror, but I've seen lots of interviews with him, and he doesn't like that term being used. He kind of has this, you know, he, you know, he doesn't like the label for various reasons. But also, David Cronenberg's son, Brandon Cronenberg, is another amazing director. Affinity Pool, he directed with starring Mia Goth that came out a few years ago, which that movie is just so fucking insane. So his son is just, totally off the rails and just an amazing director in himself. But his movies, as far as the body horror kind of thing, really, I think, even though he doesn't like to kind of associate with that kind of a term, his his foray into practical effects and showing extreme violence and gore, as a director, as a horror director, and was unprecedented at that time. I mean, he really shocked the world with kind of his aesthetic, and that is something that's changed. His work really changed the course of cinema. One of the most influential movie directors of all time. I think one of the most, as far as examples of that in recent time, would definitely be The Substance of Demi Moore, which came out 2024. Which that movie is just completely fucking insane and amazing. Greatly influenced, massively influenced by Cronenberg. But it's got its own thing. It's totally it's not a knockoff or a ripoff. Another film of his that I think is just so amazing, and I really want to see it again. Dead Ringers, Jeremy Irons. Super disturbing, weird, such a strange movie, but amazing. 1988. Eastern Promises, another one of his later films. Another film that he did with Viggo Mortensen, which is an amazing film. Naked Lunch. Masterpiece. What else can be said about that film? The Dead Zone, of course, which I just mentioned. I have that. I have a beautiful edition of The Dead Zone on Blu-ray. Another one of his amazing films, which I haven't seen in a long time, is The Brood from '79. Wow. Shivers from '75 is the most recent Cronenberg movie I think that I've bought on Blu-ray. I have History of Violence and Eastern Promises on DVD, but they definitely need an upgrade. Um, Dangerous Method, which is a really such an extremely different movie, for him, but an amazing film. Amazing film, super underrated. I think it's really about kind of the relationship that Carl Jung had with Sigmund Freud, and it does take liberties, with the story, of them kind of knowing each other. But it's such a great movie, and it's kind of a fucked up movie, but super interesting. And then he did a movie with Robert Pattinson, which was one of the movies that really got me interested in Robert Pattinson as an actor. Where I was like, this guy is the real deal. You know, Cosmopolis, which came out in 2012, which is a really interesting and strange movie. Um, Robert Pattinson up until that point, like, he was known for the Twilight movies, obviously, which I think do get beaten up and get really shit on. And I don't think they're as bad as people say they are. I actually think they're kind of decent movies. They're not great, but they're definitely kind of lighthearted and fun. But I don't think they're as terrible as they are. But this movie, Cosmopolis, was the movie where I was like, whoa, this is the same guy from the Twilight movies. Like, he's an amazing actor, one of my favorites, and I attribute to seeing this movie that really gave me this sense of like this new identity of how I like viewed Robert Pattinson as an actor, and he went on to do The Lighthouse, which is a fucking masterpiece, and he's my favorite Batman of all time, which is saying a lot because Batman is my all-time favorite superhero character, and I'm a huge fan of the Christopher Nolan movies and Tim Burton films. But that movie is a masterpiece. I think that is it's the like the definitive version of that character. And the same thing goes for like Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. Massive Dracula fan, and I've always been my number one has always been Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, Gary Oldman, which is still kind of an untouchable masterpiece. But I really think what Robert Eggers did with Nosferatu is just kind of a step above. Um, he's also David Cronenberg has actually been an actor, and I actually think he's great. He was in Nightbreed, Clive Barker's Nightbreed, and he's awesome in that. He was also in briefly Jason X, and he's fantastic in it. I mean, just so many great films. So, and then he did a film a few years back. It had been quite a few years since he put out a movie. I mean, he's getting up there in age and everything, and like we all are. But he did a movie in 2022, Crimes of the Future. Also, his third collaboration with Viggo Mortensen, and it's a pretty good movie. It's not great. It's super bizarre and wild visually, and I don't think it's like story wise, I want to have you. It's not his strongest movie, but I think it's pretty cool, and the visual element in the storyline is wild. Um, I do like that movie. I mean, I don't equate it to like The Fly or Dead Ringers or these other films, but pretty decent. So and there's been a long time, a long gap in between. Um, the since he had put out a film, and so when it was announced that he was going to be putting out this new movie, The Shrouds, I got really excited about it because, and I remember hearing about it about 6 or 7 months ago, and I guess it had come out and played for a couple of festivals, and supposedly, like from what I got from reading about it, it really blew people away, and people were like, "Wow, like this movie is like classic Cronenberg, and it's like Return to Form, and it's like fucked up and just bizarre and really great." And I so I kind of got the sense that there was a lot of buzz after this movie had come out, and then I heard too that this movie was getting a pretty big release, for being in different theaters. So I actually tried with a friend who is also really my friend Samantha, who helps run the World After Dark in Waldoboro, which is amazing, amazing series. We both looked into pursuing, trying to find that movie. It was pretty funny. If it was playing anywhere in Maine, and we could not find anything about it, so I never got a chance to see it. She's also a massive Cronenberg fan. So we never got to see it. So then, just recently, I think it was like last week, it just came out uh, on Blu-ray. It got a physical release, and I don't know how long it was in the theaters for. I don't think it was in the theaters very, very long. But I tried pretty hard to track it down and to go see it because I don't think I've ever seen as huge of a fan as I am of Cronenberg as I am, I don't believe. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a Cronenberg film in the theater, which is kind of weird. So I was trying, but so I was pretty excited. I was looking forward to this movie, and I rented it the other night, last weekend, and I watched it. And I have to say, this movie was really a big letdown. I was super disappointed with this movie. I didn't make it all the way through. It's kind of the story or the concept, and it's kind of, I guess, a high concept kind of film, is actually really interesting. It's kind of about this guy who is, this entrepreneur, and he starts this business of where they he's able, with this new technology, he owns this uh, mortuary. They create this technology where they put these cameras inside of coffins, so loved ones can, like, basically see their loved ones in their coffins, and while they decompose, and they can get this sense of being connected to them more. So it's pretty fucked up and kind of twisted. The story is kind of wild. So, and I didn't know anything about what this movie was about, and so the story itself is very interesting, and through learning about this new kind of thing that's happening with this new technology, there's this discovery of these other things that are actually happening, kind of this like conspiracy theory, and it's kind of interesting. But I really didn't like the writing for this movie, and it was super bland, super boring. And I almost hate saying it because I love Cronenberg to death. I did not make it through this movie. I got about 45 minutes, maybe an hour into this movie, and I was just so bored and just so kind of underwhelmed by this film, that I just was like, I can't do it. And I didn't really like the acting in this film. I thought it just felt really, I don't know, everything felt really canned. It felt really forced. It kind of felt like a kind of a bad TV movie. Yeah, it just, there was no chemistry with the actors. The cast was pretty good. Vincent Cassel's in this film, which he's a pretty good actor, but super bland, super boring. Um, yeah, his previous movie I thought was much more interesting. Not fantastic, but still pretty good, and definitely worth watching. But this movie, I did not. There was like zero spark for me, and it was just really bland. And I know the movie, from what I heard, does get progressively more bizarre and bonkers, and there's more plot reveals. But I had no real interest in this movie. I just didn't really, feel a drive to keep watching it. So I just kind of like, I took it out. And yeah, so the Shrouds, it came out in 2025. Highly disappointing. I don't know what really went wrong with this film. I think, again, the premise, the story, the idea is really cool, really interesting. But I didn't like the writing for this film. The screenplay and the casting was off. And it just felt, there was no real chemistry. I didn't really care about any of the characters. Um, it just really felt bland and super flat. And I didn't make it through it at all. Like, it made me want to throw in a classic Cronenberg film to like make up for it. Yeah. So overall, I would not recommend it. There's so many movies, in his amazing career to check out if you haven't seen them, or just to revisit. But I would overall take a hard pass on this movie. High concept film. I mean, most Cronenberg films are all high concept, but not a very good movie. And I wouldn't. I actually would not recommend this movie. So anyway, happy Halloween. Peace.